Welcome to TMS Insights. It's a special edition in a special week. Budget week, Matt Salmon.
Budget week,
one
very
of the partners
exciting.
here at TMS, and great to have you here to break down. It's been a confusing week for a lot of people.
Yes.
Most budgets, we often say, are not a big event. This was a different one. This was certainly a lot of detail, a lot of content. And so as we head into the weekend to provide everybody with some of the things that they might want to be thinking about, and also to put them in a position where they're not worrying about the things that aren't maybe so important. So let's maybe start with the big things, the things that we do need to talk about, the things that were mentioned. And let's start with the first thing, which will apply to some people, not everybody, but the days of trusts have changed quite markedly.
Yeah, absolutely. I think they've kiboshed trusts altogether, really, for family trusts, discretionary trusts, especially when you're looking at adding bucket companies to them. This is a strategy that some clients would have, and some clients would be quite concerned about it. However, it's also a strategy that people growing their wealth would be looking at in the future. So you've now have to start looking at different elements. I mean, the rules, what they've done for trusts is any distributions from a trust are now taxed at 30% as a flat rate.
From the trust, whereas in the past it was only taxed when it was distributed.
That's right. So when it was received by the beneficiary, that's when you paid the tax. So the benefit of a trust is if you have multiple beneficiaries, you can use multiple tax rates.
And lower your tax
overall.
Importantly, this comes into place in a bit over 2 years' time.
That's right. So 1st of July 28 is when it actually comes into place. So one of the benefits we were talking about is you've still got this financial year to do distributions to multiple beneficiaries if you have that option.
And two more.
And two more. So it's not straight away, but it's certainly something you need to be thinking about.
And the notion of this bucket company came up quite a lot in the last few years. Again, that's something that no longer has the value once these rules apply.
Yeah, that's right. So because of the 30%, direct tax on distributions, but also the extra kicker is franking credits can no longer be used by the receivers. So in a personal tax situation or a bucket company, bucket companies wouldn't exist anymore.
If you've used a trust structure, you've used a bucket company, you need to talk to us and or your accountant, right? So that's important.
Definitely.
Okay, the second thing they talked about, capital gains tax. Let's break that down for everybody because it's going to change as of 30 June next year, 2027.
So again, you've got a year to get things in order, but capital gains tax from 30 June 27, you used to have for long-term assets you've held over 12 months, a 50% discount on any gains. That is being removed, but the important thing is it's proportional. So if you've held an investment property for 20 years, it'll start accumulating the inflationary gains,
the new ones,
the new gains as of 1st of July 27. So you'll have 1 year and 20 as a percentage where you'll have the new regime. You'll still get the 50% discount for the majority of the asset. So the people it's going to affect, I think, and unfortunate for them, is if you've bought an investment property or assets like that in the last couple of years, in 5 years' time, it'll be a larger proportion taxed at the new rate.
And this is the point. For people who've been using these, and the next one we'll talk about, which is negative gearing, they've still had the benefit. They've got the benefit for a little while longer. If you plan on using these for the future, bad luck, you've missed out. So that's a real problem there. So let's talk about negative gearing. Again, these are rules going to come into place. Do we want to explain what that will look like?
So again, it's 1st of July 27. So if you had a property prior to budget night,
and this is a residential property?
This is a residential property that was negative geared. You can continue to negative gear that forever and a day. So I imagine people will be holding on to those properties. It's almost like gold, sort of that style of thing. It's only on residential properties, so you can still negative gear on commercial properties and shares. So it'll change the way a lot of people look at different asset classes, because the tax has suddenly changed where it was blanket across various asset classes.
I think the Treasurer was asked about that. He said 98% of negative gearing is on residential property.
Yes, yeah.
And therefore it's quite an interesting one, what they might mean for shares.
Yes.
So
the interesting point there is you can borrow a lot more and leverage a lot more.
Of course.
Property. Banks are much happier.
Exactly.
So that's traditionally why
it's grown so much.
Yep.
So the three things that they did talk about, the changes coming, and you will need to speak to us about are the trusts and bucket companies, capital gains tax, and negative gearing.
The other thing I'll just point out with trusts is you have a restructure rollover relief.
Yes.
So you can actually roll assets out of a trust and retain the cost base into a different vehicle or your personal name, which is pretty important. You have that up until 2030. So you've got a few years to get your assets in place if they're in a trust. It'll be problematic for larger liquid assets.
Farms and things like that. So, but at least they've given some give, and it's also fair to say that some of these rules will have some negotiation with lobby groups to Canberra. So this is not law yet, but that's all legislated. So that's important. Right. But let's go to the second big point here, Matt, is to talk about what they didn't talk about. Okay, and let's mention super. It's been talked about most budgets and most years for a long time. Nothing new came out this time.
No, nothing new. They haven't basically touched super, even with these changes. So it's had a carve out with the CGT rules. What that really, I've been talking to a few clients now, so wealthier, younger clients who were using negative gearing, different things. And to me, this is just you're bringing forward the transition of assets into super. So super is far and away the best vehicle now.
So super becomes a winner because it hasn't been addressed like all the other things that we mentioned just before.
And they have addressed super enough in the last few years that they don't want to touch that much more.
That's it, So this becomes front and centre in terms of wealth creation. It was right at the heart of a lot of what we were doing and advising on in any case, but that's still very much the case. So
definitely.
You really want to be actioning those things. And look, the second thing wasn't mentioned was the family home, the principal place of residence.
I mean, one thing I would say, whenever younger people come and see us, the best investment in Australia is your family home. And the government's made it that way with CGT tax-free forever and a day. You can leverage into it. You own it for 30 years. Your mortgage is gone. You've got a tax-free investment that's constantly growing. So they haven't touched that. They will never touch that sort of thing. So that's
you can't ever imagine a world
that's your starting investment, I would have thought.
I wouldn't want to be the politician that floated that one up on budget night in the future. So, of course, for the private wealth scenario, superannuation and your home. The two building blocks, and they remain that way.
Yeah, definitely.
And the third thing they didn't talk about was small business concessions for the small business owners. So do we want to explain that again just for everybody?
Just very briefly, there's rollover relief and CGT relief for small business owners because the idea is they haven't been able to put money into super throughout their life. They're building their business. That hasn't been touched. So it's a massive benefit if you're in that situation. And it's something we can help clients with.
Great. Okay, so final thoughts for everybody. It's been a hectic week of analysis and there's going to be lots written, I imagine, over this weekend and the weeks and months ahead. There's a lot of work by professionals to be done trying to understand strategy. The key takeaways for clients?
The key takeaways? Well, I think you need to look at your investment structures. So you've got a limited time to do that. You've got the rollover relief. It's certainly something, come to us, have a chat with us.
Get in touch.
Get in touch. We can also model, even with investment properties and things, what's going to happen in 2 years, depending on how long you've had it proportionally. We can model the tax outcomes. So if you're interested, if you're worried about it, certainly have a chat with your advisor. We can do some modelling, look at different structures going forward and what we can do for you there.
That's terrific.
The other thing I'll point out is there's a lot, we're being very broad.
We're not
there's
a lot more detail.
There's a lot more detail in here, so
that's really
we won't have covered everything.
Just for when you get in touch with us, we will be able to fill in those gaps, but for today's purpose, we want you to focus on the important things. There's been a lot of noise. It's important not to focus on everything. So, but thanks, Matt, for this. It's, I think, made it very clear for everybody, and we hope you weren't too daunted by the budget, and maybe you can see some of the opportunities that still exist.